Okay, so today is demo 6. I got the number right this time. Congrats. Okay, so today we're starting a little late, but that's okay because we don't have all that much stuff to do today. So what I'm gonna the demo today is gonna be split into two parts. One is I'm gonna show you guys how to one install and two use Postman. Postman is a really powerful tool for you to kind of like test your networking stuff before you actually implement it in your project. And it's cool in the sense that it's like really easy to use, and there's a lot of like really cool features that like this is really powerful. I don't even know all the features. So I'm just gonna show you the basics, and you can feel free to explore more on your own. And in the second part, Elvis will show you how to install Cocoapods, and he'll explain more about that later. Okay, so if you haven't already, please download Postman. Go to like this part of the here. So week 6, networking 1 lecture demo. There should only be one. If there's two, please refresh our page. We deleted one of them. And if you don't want to click on this, you can just actually just type like Postman download. Go here, first one, and then just download the respective one for your computer architecture. Elvis is, I think this is Apple. Yeah, this is an Apple one. Nice M1. So
there's a way to check it too. You want to show them check it? I check like which chip it's on.
Oh, like just here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you can do that.
All right. It says like in chip.
All right, and give it some time. Okay, so after you download it, it should appear in your downloads. And when you open it, well, I mean, sure, you can like move it if you want. Doesn't really matter. If you plan on using it in the future, I suggest you do move it. And it'll open. Okay, so it'll open something like this if it gives you like a pop-up and asks you like to create an account or sign in. You can feel free to create an account. It's free, right? I suggest. Okay, yeah. So feel free to create an account. It's free. You can link it to your Cornell email if you want. Or like whatever email you want, doesn't really matter. Okay. So how's everyone doing? Who has installed it? Can you give me a thumbs up if you installed it? Who's still installing it? Okay. Right, I'll like go slowly. I'll quickly talk about what's going on here. Okay. So on the left-hand side, you have a lot of features, right? There's collections, APIs, environments, mock servers, monitor, and history. I have actually only used collections and history. The rest I haven't used before. But I can like give a rough overview. So APIs, later on, if you're working for some big company, they have a lot of APIs that you're working with. You can just store them here, right? It's a nice little place for you to just house everything together. Environments has to do with sometimes like you want, for example, you have like a password, right? For when you're using your computer, you log in once, right? But you don't always have to like use your password to like open Chrome or something, right? That's because your computer has verified you once and has stored that password somewhere. But where does it store it, right? That has to do with the idea of an environment variable, and this is kind of like the way you can handle a lot of these environment variables, as well as just like compute environments. But you don't have to worry about that, okay? I haven't even used this function actually. Mock service is just like if you want to create a dummy server to run for a little bit. Monitor is, I don't actually know, sorry. And history is like, what you've done before on the app. Okay. So 99% of the time you'll be using collections. So what is a collection, right? You can think of it as like a folder, just like how on your desktop you have a folder. And in this folder, you just put all your API requests. Okay, so remember back from lecture on Monday, I talked about all the different kinds of HTTP requests. So you have your GET request, your POST request, you have your delete request, and you have your other kind of requests. Okay, so let's show you how you can make such a request. So first I'm going to create a new collection, right? Again, collection is just like a folder. And actually, before I even do that, let me just make it dark theme. So it's a little lighter on the eyes. Okay, that's easier. All right, so again, you can sign in if you want, right? Just to save everything. All right, so let's make a collection. And let's just call it demo 6. right? So, ideally, if you're going to work on like a hack challenge or like your project has like a name for your app, then you'll put that name over there. Okay. And in this collection, now you can have a oh, sorry, I made another collection. I don't want this one. Now in this collection, you can start adding routes. So how do you do that? You can click on this and you can do add. So not a route, sorry, a request. And I'll show you that one more time. If you click on the three dots here, you can click add a request, and then you'll get a request, right? You can also give this request to me. So this is my first get request, right? Or if this is like something like if it's like some serious get request, you can be like, oh, like get student IDs or something, right? But this is just for demo purposes. I'm just call it my first get request, right? So as long as when you read the name, you know what it does. Okay. So you see how there's this green get over here, right? That's basically saying it's a get request. But how can I kind of change it, right? So let me just move my face somewhere else. I'll put it like here. Okay. So over here, you see this drop down, right? Actually, I can make it bigger. All right. So here in this drop down, remember how I said there's a lot of other different requests, right? These are all your other requests. But again, you only really need to use the first couple: get, post. Put is a little different, and then delete, right? So I'll be showing you a get and a post request right now. Now, for after you select the type of request, right? Remember back to when I showed you guys what a URL is? Here is where you would put in your URL. So where do I get my URL from, right? In the next project, not the project for this week. The project for this week has to do just setting up basic Cocoapods so that you guys have somewhere to start. Next week's project, we will actually have you build out a message board, and we will provide you a request for you to hit. For now, I'm just going to show you some random sample requests or random sample kind of URLs that some nice person out there has made for you. So, wrong side. Oh, where'd it go? Here. So if you go to here, so if you go to documenter.guestpostman.com, can you guys see that up here? Or you don't have to go there if you don't want to. Like I can just show you it. The idea is there's a whole lot of URLs here that you can try like hitting. So over here, say for example, there are cat facts, right? So this is the URL that hosts cat facts. So how can I get a cat fact? So let me just copy this URL. So I did Control-C, and I'm going to go to, wrong side again. I'm going to go to Postman, and I'm going to paste this URL in. Okay. So what I did, I created a request. I selected the type of request, and then I put in the URL. Okay. And also one small note, if you see this little red dot here, that means you didn't save. If I save Command S, then that disappears. Okay. All right. Type of request, URL, and I just send it. What happens? Sending the request. And after a little bit of time, okay, this is longer than usual. Okay, maybe the cats aren't cooperating today. Let's try dogs. Okay, let me replace the URL. Okay, so dogs are being nice today. So I sent this GET request to this API endpoint, and it gave me some data, right? Remember how I talked about requests and responses. You send the request, they respond. So down here is the response, right? And remember how I talked about response codes yesterday on Monday, right? 200 means all good. So over here, we see a status of 200, right? So that means all good. And then it has a time, some size, doesn't really matter. Okay, so let me just quickly show you some cool features that you can do with Postman. And then after that, I'm going to hand it off to Elvis to show you how to install Cocoapods. And we will wrap that up and kind of brief you about the project for this week. Okay, so you see how everything is kind of indented nicely, right? And that is because I selected JSON here. Hopefully that sounds familiar, right? Remember when we talked about this kind of way of standardizing communication between us sending data as well as kind of them responding, right? If we use JSON, this way of kind of like a dictionary, this key value pair structure, then we can always decode it in the same way. So over here, we get a JSON as a response. So if I select the JSON, it's like, okay, I know how to like parse this, right? So it can like parse it nicely. But by default, or maybe like HTML or something, right? You see how this is really ugly. So just make sure that you're on JSON, right? And sometimes, it may look like all messy, right? If you select pretty, then it will kind of indent everything for you, okay? There are some tips that I learned very later on, and I kind of regretted it. So just make sure that you guys know this in the beginning. All right. So I showed you a really, really, really simple GET request, right? But you can also sometimes, remember I talked about like parameters on Monday, right? You can send like other bits of information in your request, kind of like you're appearing at your friend's door with a gift, right? Or with a bomb, right? You can appear with different things. And so what you can do is you can actually send query parameters. So let me find a endpoint that takes a parameter. Okay, cool. So over here, right, you see how it specifies 1, it's a GET request, 2, this is the URL, and 3, it takes in some parameters. So I'm going to copy the URL, right? And so you see how I didn't copy everything past the question mark, right? That's on purpose. But you can if you want and just delete it afterwards, and I'll show you why. Okay, so I'm going to put this here. All right, I'm just going to delete. Oh, it's too smart. Okay, I'm going to delete this. Okay. So now I want to give it some parameters, right? What parameters did it want? It wanted a page, and it wanted some proximity square. So let me give that to it, right? I'll give it a page, and I'll give it a proximity square. Control V. All right. So you see how this parameter or this like URL up top changed a little bit, right? Namely, you see this question mark appear and this page and proximity square appear, right? And then now if I add the values, you see it'll change even more. So if I add 1, but then value, I put 1, and in the value here, I put 100, right? So what I'm saying is I give it a value of page being 1, and I give it a value of proximity square being 100, right? You see how the URL also changes, and it actually has this like page equal to 0, proximity square equals to 0, equals to 100, right? So that's just basically remember how you can put the parameters in the URL. That's basically what it's doing here. But Postman is nice in the sense that all you have to do is just specify the parameters down here, and it will construct the query or construct the URL for you, right? So when you go around to using Postman, all you really have to do is just get the base URL, which is kind of just, when I delete all this, this is the endpoint you're hitting, right? Maybe you'll have some other slashes, right? And then you can just fill in the parameters down here, and it will basically create and populate the URL for you. Finally, if I send it, hopefully it works. If it doesn't really matter, right? Because this is not our endpoint. But the purpose of this demo was to show you 1, how to install Postman, and 2, how to send your first request. Okay? Any questions? All right, hopefully that was straightforward. So Postman is a really simple tool to start getting used to, but there's so many powerful features, automation, ways to like set up testing. I'm just buying time. Hopefully this will kind of respond to me. But yeah, there's a lot of other things you can do. So you can feel free to explore in your own time. You can also go down, it responded, nice. You can also go down this rabbit hole of like YouTube videos if you want, right? It's really cool. And okay, so this is interesting, right? So you see how it gives me a bunch of these angular brackets, right? This is called HTML. And HTML is basically a language for building websites. And when you get a response like this, right, what do? So there are many ways of fixing or like kind of debugging, right? First thing is to look at the response code, right? See how this begins with 5? What does 5 mean? Right, it means it's not a problem, right? So, okay, there's nothing wrong with Postman, nothing wrong with our code here. Great job, right? So if this were to be a hack challenge, if this endpoint were to be made by, your teammate, then you can like take a screenshot, right? Ideally tell them 1, what URL you're hitting, 2, what parameters you're sending, and 3, and this is really important, what time you sent it, right? Because maybe they're like setting something up, they're making a migration, right? And it was down for that time being, and you send it some other time in the morning and it still works, right? So then they're like, not really a big deal. But if it's something that like they weren't touching, but it just happened to break, then they can use that time to look at the logs, right? So the time at which you sent it that made it crash is also really important for debugging. Okay, cool. So that's all for the Postman demo. Now I'll hand it back off to Elvis. He'll show you how to set up Cocoapods. And then at the end, I'll talk about the project for this week. We made it really chill just to show you how Cocoapods work. So yeah, that is all. Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. So as I mentioned last lecture, I wasn't able to finish the demo. So I'm just going to be going over the entire demo again. It's not that much, so it shouldn't be too long of a video. But yeah, to kind of pick up where, or at least to make it concise, I'm going to start from the beginning. So we're talking about external libraries. So the whole reason we talk about these things called Cocoapods is to use some external libraries. So what is an external library, right? So external libraries are these things that we use to accomplish tasks that have already been like solved. So say for example, like there's code for some animation and I don't want to like reinvent the wheel. So instead I just want to use this external library to kind of do that animation. Then I would be using like Cocoapods to get that external library. So the whole issue like with external libraries is how do I use them? How do I actually like how am I actually able to get them and use them in my own code? So for example, these are some external libraries that we have. On Eatery, we have some animation stuff, you know. For Google Maps, we have the Google Maps API, which allows us to use Google Maps so we don't have to implement the entire map layout and design like ourselves. And there's also this thing called Lottie images or Lottie animations. So Lottie animations was developed by Airbnb. And there's just another like library that deals with all the animations that we could have in our apps. It would be animated. I would animate it, but like if I present the slides, it'll mess up like my layout. So I won't present it, but believe me, that's an animation. And so the question arises like, how do we actually use these external libraries? Like what manages these libraries that we have that we want to use that other people have made? And the way we manage them, the way we're actually able to use them and import them is through these things called Cocoapods. And so Cocoapods, it's basically like an external dependency manager for Swift. And an external dependency manager basically just means like it'll take care of like downloading and getting these libraries so that we could use it in our own apps. And Cocoapods directly integrates into our app environment. And I'll show you a little bit more about that later. So they're just a way to download these libraries. And Python and Node.js, if you're familiar with them, they're like web apps for like different kinds of front-end development. Front-end apps have different forms of Cocoapods, like some have pip, some have npm. In our case, we're going to be using Cocoapods to install these external libraries into our apps. And so this is how we download Cocoapods. So sudo gem install Cocoapods. And then what you could do is a pod init. And it's basically just these two lines of code to actually import Cocoapods into our Mac. And so once we have them on our Mac, we don't have to do this ever again. So after we install Cocoapods, they will always be there. And yeah, however, this pod init command, we have to do within our project. So every time we want to include Cocoapods within our project, we're gonna have to call pod init. But to actually have Cocoapods on our computer, we want to do sudo gem install Cocoapods. And you could do this in whichever like directory you're in, just as long as you put this line of code in your terminal, no matter what directory you're in, it'll install it. So let me do that right now. Oh, and the way I got my terminal is I just like press command on the keyboard plus a space, and it brings up Spotlight search. And then I just typed in terminal, and I could just open it like this. And yeah, so here's my terminal, and I already have Cocoapods installed. So also another thing about sudo gem install, typically you only want to sudo things that are safe, because what sudo is basically saying is that like whatever line of code you're going to execute after sudo has access to anything on your computer with your password. So keep in mind that like anytime you do sudo, you're basically granting that command that you're doing access to anything with a password on the computer, which is like a lot of things. So please always be wary like with like what you're sudoing. Typically, if you can, try doing the command without sudo. And if it works, then you're fine. However, gem install Cocoapods needs sudo permissions to write to my directory, so I will actually give it those permissions. And all that basically means is just like I'm gonna have to type out sudo gem install Cocoapods. And it's gonna ask me for my password. Anytime I use sudo, it's gonna prompt me to type in my password, and so I'll type it in. And so I typed it in, but as you can see, it looks like I didn't type anything in. So that's basically just something that happens with terminal. It's something. It's a property about terminals where like whenever you type in your password, you can't actually see it. So it looks like nothing. I actually typed nothing, but there's something there. Trust that you typed something there. And so now that my password's there, I'll press enter, and it'll install Cocoapods. When you first install Cocoapods, it'll have many more lines in this because it'll be the first time you're installing Cocoapods onto your computer. So don't worry if like what my like what the lines following my installation, if they look different than yours, because you will probably have a lot more lines, maybe a little color in there. But the idea is it should say like successfully installed stuff. And if it says that, then you're all good. I know a lot of people were having issues with this yesterday. If you're still having issues, feel free to hit Justin or I up on Ed, just make an Ed post. A lot of people have been encountering these issues, so as long as you put it on Ed, I'm sure somebody would be more than down to answer it. So yeah, I just installed CocoaPods, right? But now the purpose of this demo is to actually use CocoaPods for a project. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. If you go ahead to the iOS course webpage and go to networking 1 lecture demo, I have this demo 6 starter code, so I'm gonna download that. And I'm gonna see where it is, and it's right here. Oh, it looks like I already have. Let's delete this. Yeah, it's right here, and here it is. So this is my folder containing my starter code. In fact, I could just drag and drop this out here too, just so it's easier for you guys to see. But here's my starter code. I'll run through it a bit. Okay, opens. I'll minimize this too. Okay, so yeah, trust and open. And okay, it looks like we have it loading. Let me just build it while I explain it. So right now, all we have in this demo is a little button here. And this button is going to play this animation that we're gonna install using CocoaPods. So right now the animation is not there. Yeah, so I have this button, I give it a title play, I give it a background color, I give it a corner radius, I give it a target play swift, and play swift is just saying like play this button. Play swift is this function that's going to play the animation once we get it. And I have the constraints down here. And yeah, wait, why is this like blank? Okay, it's there. Never mind. That scared me for a second. But yeah, there's a play button. And here in our seeding delegate, it actually has nothing. I didn't initialize it to be anything because we're not using any navigation at all for this demo. App delegate, exactly the same. Literally all the code I have is just here. And yeah, just the button, setting up the button, setting up the corner radius, making it look nice and pretty. And also in my assets, I actually have oh, it is not here. Wait, that is not good. Wait a minute. There was supposed to be a JSON somewhere in here. Okay, so let me just go to okay, I need that JSON animation for my thing. So what am I gonna call it? I'm gonna look at Lottie image files, Lottie animations. Okay. Basically, I need a JSON to hold the animation itself, and where I downloaded my animations is here in the Lottie files, right? So I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go to design, discover. Are you ready to use animations? Oh, I get to search. Okay, there's this one specific animation that I want us to use, and it's going to be called, oh shoot, where is it? No. Hold up. Okay, I'm just gonna search for Swift. Swift here. Swift. Swift. Okay. And okay, this is the animation that I want right here. It's called Swift logo. I'm just click on it. And I'm just gonna click download. I'm gonna download it as a Lottie JSON. Okay, so I think you may need an account to download this file. I will make sure that the demo has this JSON. So I will change this demo so it has the JSON. So you won't have to download it. But that's basically just downloading the JSON. And I just click this search button thingy, and I'm gonna change this JSON name. I just clicked enter on the document, and I'm just gonna call it swift.json. Oops. Oh, you're lying. Okay, it's right here too. That's so embarrassing. Okay, I'm just drag and drop it here then. Okay. So yeah, I'm just call it Swift. So there's my JSON file. It's not that important. It's just getting the animation JSON. So let's actually get to using pod stuff. So what I first want to do is I want to cd into my directory for this project. So what I'm gonna do, this is my project here. This is my project folder. I'm gonna cd into this folder right here. Keep in mind, I am not cding into this demo 6 starter. This is a different folder than I want to use. I want to make sure I'm in this folder area, in this folder specifically. So I'm gonna cd into this folder. And the way I do cd is I just like drag and drop the folder here. So I just cd, and then it gives you like the path directory. So it's like in my users /else Marcelo desktop /demo 6 starter. That's where my folder is on my computer. So I'm gonna cd into that. And you'll see it that it'll be successful if like it says demo 6 start at the end. And if I do ls, it'll basically tell me all the files within this folder directory. And as you can see, I only have like demo 6 starter, the Xcode project, and a folder called demo 6 starter. That's exactly what I have here, just demo 6 starter and demo 6 starter.xcode project. Okay, so I'm successfully in it. And so now it's actually get pods installed onto this project. I'm going to do a little pod init. And what pod init is going to do, you'll know it's successful if it like says nothing afterwards. If on your first time doing pod init, it might say some more stuff. Like if you're on your first time doing it ever, you might run into errors. So like I said, consult ed, look at some ed posts. A lot of people have been having the same issue, so please look at ed. But basically you'll know it's successful when you see this pod file here now. So you have demo 6 starter, demo 6 starter.xcode project, and this pod file. So now in this pod file, this is basically where I'm going to be installing the packages that I want to use. So in this case, I want to use an animation package called Lottie. So I'm just gonna open this pod file, and it's just a text file basically. And down here it says like pods for demo 6 starter. And so I'm just gonna add this pod. I'm gonna add pod, I think it's pod Lottie iOS. And the spacing could be like whatever you want. Like it could be out here, and it would still work. It typically should be aligned with like the user frameworks line of code over there. Like if I open my L1 key, L11 key, you'll see like after this is how like a typical pod file looks like. This is for one of our apps, course grab. We have a lot of different pods here. Typically for apps, you also might have like a collection of libraries, external libraries that you want to use. And here we use like SnapKit, we use Google Sign-In, we use Firebase, and as you can see, all the pod stuff is aligned with user frameworks. So it's just for convention. We don't the spacing shouldn't affect how the code is run. So if you have an error, don't think it's because of your indentation. If it's anything, it's going to be how you spell it. So I'm going to do pod. Now that I have it there, I'm going to click save. So I saved the pod file, so it has that line now. And I'm going to do pod install. And pod install, what pod install is going to do is going to install all the dependencies that I have. So it's going to install like this one dependency that I have, this one library, which is called Lottie iOS. And you might be wondering where I got this like Lottie iOS thing from. And it's basically like on this GitHub. Lottie documentation. And the way I get this library is through going to this iOS page and getting the name. This is the name. So it has to be spelled out this way. There's no other way to spell it out because every pod has a specific name. Every library has a specific name. So that's the specific name for the Lottie iOS library. And yeah, now that I installed it, I'll actually be able to use animation. So just to make sure I don't run into any bugs, I'm just going to reopen and close this project. And actually, now that we have pods installed, we never want to open the blue demo6 starter.xcode project anymore. We don't touch this file anymore. Instead, now with pods, we open this demo6 starter.xcode workspace, this white file now. And so let's open it. And it looks exactly the same as the blue one. So a lot of people get confused because they accidentally open this blue one instead, when in fact they should be opening the white one, because this white one now has the pods like installed and working. So, and it's the same layout basically, except it has this like the pods here down below. And yeah, there's all the pods. But what we really want to look at is the demo6 starter stuff, right? So now we have a view controller. And okay, yeah. So we installed a library correctly. If you got up to here, you installed the library correctly. So let's actually do this animation part, right? So I'm gonna say first I have to import the library like physically into code. So now we're gonna actually start coding. I want to import Lottie. It's gonna say import Lottie. And if you did it correctly, you should also see how like it auto corrects to Lottie. I don't even have to like I don't even have to type the rest. I can just press tab. So usually if you don't install the Lottie library correctly, it's because, or the way you could tell like if you didn't install it correctly is if it doesn't autocomplete like that. But because it autocompletes, I know that it's on my project, so my project's fine. So now I have Lottie, and the first thing I want to do is create an image, an animation view. So I'm gonna say let Swift animation view. Let's go to UI. Is it Lottie animation view? Or actually, wait, I think it's like bar. Yeah, okay, it's like this, and this. So I'm gonna say this thing Swift animation view is going to be a of type Lottie animation view. Okay. And now let's actually set up this animation view. So I'm gonna say Swift animation view dot init, or is it two? And it's gonna have instead it's gonna be a name, and the name that I want it to be is Swift. And what this is saying is like I'm gonna initialize this animation view to have some file that is named Swift. And in this case, our animation is called Swift here. So it's referring to that animation JSON. So now I have the animation, and I just want to do the same things that I did before. I'm going to translate our Raster change to be false, and I'm going to say Swift animation view dot. Oh no, I'm going to just say view dot add subview, and then Swift animation view. I believe that should be all that we need. So now that we have the animation view set up, what we could do is set up the constraints for our animation. So I'm just gonna say ns layout constraint to activate. Okay, now I'm just gonna say I'm gonna make it like I want it to be in the center of the screen, and I want it to have some constant width and height. So I'm gonna set the width and height of this Swift animation view to be like 3/4 of the view's width, and I'm just gonna make it in. I'm gonna put in the bare center of the screen. So let's just do that. Animation view dot center. Put in the center. I'm gonna say center Y anchor. To view dot center Y. Then I'm gonna say Swift animation view dot center X. To view dot center X. So now my animation view is in the very center, and now I'm just gonna give it a defined width and height, so it looks big. So I'm gonna say Swift animation view dot width anchor equal. I'm gonna say equal to instead because I wanna say it's equal to the view dot width anchor, but I wanna set it to be 3/4 of the view. So I'm gonna say 0.75 as a multiplier. just gonna copy the same line of code, and instead I'm gonna say the height. So it's the same thing. So I put it in the center with these two lines here. I put it in the center, and then I give it a constant width and height, so it's a circle because it is a circle, you know. And then this button play Swift. This is the button that's actually going to animate the animation that we have. I'm going to say Swift animation view dot play, and that's all. That's how you play the animation. So if I run it, we should hopefully see that it animates. Give some time to build, and make sure you're running it in the white Xcode workspace now instead of the blue one that we had before. Ooh, okay, the button's like a little weird. Okay, I'm gonna change this code that I wrote earlier. I'm gonna say play button dot top anchor equal to Swift animation view dot bottom. That way, like that way the animation view isn't actually covering the button. Okay, cool. So now if I click play, it plays the cool little animation. And I click it as many times as I want. Isn't it so cool? But yeah, that was a short demo. I just wanted to walk you guys through how to actually install Cocoapods, how to use Cocoapods, what Cocoapods actually are. And basically, like what Cocoapods allowed me to do in this project is do all the pod init, the pod install stuff. If I didn't have Cocoapods installed, then I wouldn't have been able to run that pod command. And yeah, I just initialized, I pod init. The pod init gave me the pod file that I had in my folder here. What do I have two? Oh my god. Okay, the pod init gave me this pod file. And with this pod file, I was able to import this line pod lottie. That's me importing the library into my Xcode workspace. Yeah. If I take this out, right, and then I do let's see, pod install. It's removing this now, right? Uh-oh. Okay. So I just moved the pod. And so now let me like stop this. Let me reopen it. In my view controller, if I do import lottie, oh, it's still there. Okay, but it's unable to set it up because like it doesn't have the pod, right? So runs into error. So I'm gonna do like pod lottie iOS. So it has errors. I save this and I run pod init again. Or pod install. It'll install all the pods that I have listed here. And now I switched my Xcode to have that lottie library file thingy. And now that I reinstalled it, it should work like a charm. And it does. Sweet. Okay, yeah, that's how you use pods. And yeah, this is basically a brief overview of how to actually install pods, how to use them in code. Now you should be able to use any library you want, hopefully for any of your Swift apps. So hope you guys like the lecture, and I'll see y'all on Monday.